I'm going to read a Twitter exchange that includes some text from somebody named Alan Watts. Let me just look up Alan Watts first. But all right, let's see. Alan Watts was an English writer, theologian, and speaker known for interpreting and popularizing Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism, Taoism, and Advaita Vedanta for a Western audience. Born in Chislehurst, England, he moved to the United States in 1938 and began Zen training in New York. All right, I guess that's the guy. I don't know. Anyway, there's a quote from him. Oh, and this is a tweet by Alpha Minus. Not sure what Alpha Minus means. Maybe I should know that. Let me look that up. I'm just curious. Does that mean anything? Is that like a term in some equation or something? It says an academic mark in the lower range of the first class. Okay. There's somebody on SoundCloud named Minus Alpha, Alpha Minus, or whatever. So I guess it doesn't have any meaning in physics or anything. But I don't know. Who knows? So he said, Alan Watts dropping some pessimistic bombs. Ligotti has nothing on that. All right, and I'll read this. It's a bit long, but it's worth reading. Got to open this image in another tab. All right, this is an excerpt from something by Alan Watts. He says, there are people, for example, who can see the web as a trap and get stuck with that. There are people to whom existence is simply hateful. They see it as nothing but a ghastly mistake. The Lord really erred when he created this world, because he arranged it in such a way that everything lives by eating something else. And what I'm doing is I'm describing a certain point of view. You see, I'm not exactly philosophizing, I'm describing a point of view. You can look at life in such a way that the whole thing is this ghastly mistake. For example, there is no such thing as genuine kindness or love. Everybody is really pretending that they are loving other people in order to get some advantage from them. And indeed, there is a point of view which occurs in certain forms of paranoia, where people don't seem to be real. They are mechanisms, and you can think that out quite intensely with a good deal of intelligence. After all, if you start from a good old Darwinian or Freudian basis and see that man is a material machine and that the consciousness of man is simply a very involved and complicated form of chemistry, and that's what it is, you see, well then these awful mechanical beings, these Frankensteins that everybody is, they come around and they say, well, I'm alive, I'm a human being, I have a heart, I love, I hate, I have problems, I feel, and you feel like saying, come off it, you're just a monster, and you put on this civilized act because, really, you're just a set of teeth on the end of a tube, and got a ganglion behind those teeth, which you call your brain or alleged mind. And this thing is really, basically, there for two purposes. One, to be cunning enough to get something to eat, to put down the tube, and the other, you know what, Mr. Freud's libido. And everything else, you see, can be construed as an elaborate, subtle way of pretending that that's not really what you want to do. But you do. But you put on a great show. Now, some people, according to this view, get mixed up. They so repress that what they really want to do is to eat and to screw, that they get involved in higher things that are the masks for those activities, and think that's the real purpose of life. And then they become what's called neurotic, because they get involved in being pure camouflage. So that's what's called escaping from the facts, not looking at life, not looking at reality correctly. So he's posting these words by Alan Watts. Now this is taken out of context, right? So I don't know what Alan Watts' actual views are. This is just him presenting a certain view of that might be somebody else's view, not his own. But I'm responding to the view presented in those excerpts. And I said there's an irony to that. The person saying that life is horrible is also just a reproducing machine, a tube with a ganglion and gonads. His judgment of life is also a delusion of a higher perspective or purpose, etc. It's motivated by the same desires that he rejects. And then Alpha Minus said, he isn't necessarily rejecting them. He could just say, yes, I'm this kind of monster, but at least I'm an honest monster. And then I said, monster is a value judgment, and so is ghastly mistake. It's not truth, it's a rejection of reality. And ultimately he's saying whatever he's saying to get laid or to make money, etc. Then I quoted, there is no such thing as genuine kindness or love. And I said, sure there is, but it's not altruism or magical spirit dust. Love and kindness are evolved emotional responses that have selfish reproductive functions. He's lamenting that reality doesn't fit a delusion/lie that he and others have believed and propagated. He now rejects the lie descriptively, but still accepts it normatively. He's using the lie to judge life. So this is the point, that this person, this imaginary person that Alan Watts is describing, who may or may not be a version of him, he has this lie that everybody else is, collaborating and generating and perpetuating, that, he's a magical being with a magical soul. He's not just a mechanism, he's not just a reproducing machine, but he's doing some special, holy, profound thing, and that his feelings, his love, and his kindness are some kind of magical thing, that he's altruistic, yada, yada, yada. And then he takes a step back from this game, he adopts this more detached scientific perspective, and he looks at himself and others, and what he sees are, well, we're basically just worms that got bigger and have more stuff sticking out of the tube, but we're really just tubes that consume energy and emit entropy, and, we reproduce, we're reproducing tubes. And, this brain with all these feelings and thoughts and higher motives and, profound whatever, it's just a mechanism to get food into the tube and, get the penis into a vagina or whatever, right? It's just a mechanism to replicate the tube. And then this perspective makes life seem horrible. And he rejects it. He judges it. He says life is horrible because it's just, this base thing. It's just a reproducing tube. It's just chewing up other beings and emitting shit and trying to squirt its, seed into some other tube so that it can make a new bunch of tubes that do the same damn thing. Right? This is apholism, right? Life is horrific because life is not this lie that we have been perpetuating, but the lie was just our camouflage. So he's taking the camouflage, and he's using the camouflage to judge life itself, rather than truly throwing it away. Like if he truly threw away the lie, then he would just say, oh yeah, I'm a reproducing machine, I'm an entropy tube with gonads, and I have a ganglion, and stuff is going on inside the ganglion, it's doing its thing, and well, yeah, that's what it is. And my value judgments, I want to put my penis in this thing because, that might make a new tube. And my value judgments are just about making new tubes. That's what I am, a tube that makes new tubes. But he wouldn't say, oh, this is horrible. Because what is the ground for saying it's horrible? Only this lie. Only this camouflage, only this bullshit. So if you truly let go of the lie, you have no basis for saying this is horrible, this is a ghastly mistake, what a horror show, or any of these other value judgments. Because you would just say, well, you know, any value judgment I make, even if I say life is horrible, it's just, again, it's just part of a ganglion scheming to reproduce. Or scheming to get, you know, food and get laid. That's all I'm doing. Eat, procreate, defecate. That was a line from the X-Files. A great episode. I can't remember what it was called. Something about the coprophages, but there were some good episodes in the X-Files. A lot of shitty ones, but some good ones. I think she said eat, sleep, defecate, procreate. That was Bambi the entomologist talking to Mulder. And then she said, does my scientific detachment bother you? And he said, no, I find it refreshing. I'm paraphrasing. They probably had slightly different lines, but of course the irony there was Mulder was trying to get in her pants. He wanted to fuck her, right? That was the irony of it. Mulder would have been disturbed by her scientific detachment if she was some unattractive old woman or man or whatever, but since she was a hot chick, he didn't find it disturbing at all. He was like, no, I find your scientific detachment quite refreshing, which really translates to, I want to fuck you, right? And that's what, I mean, so yeah, you know, all of this stuff, a lot of this stuff anyway, is bullshit. Of course, it doesn't mean that we can't be genuinely curious about reality or, you know, want to seek out a real connection with a human being and have real communication and stuff. There are other instincts that we have that are not as directly tied to reproduction as, you know, lust. But all of them ultimately are about reproduction. You know, you're curious so you can seek out knowledge because knowledge is useful. It helps you to succeed. It helps you to act effectively in the world, right? That's the ultimate reason to seek knowledge. It's just so that you can act effectively. And what are you doing here? Well, you're a reproducing machine. So knowledge is ultimately about reproduction. Friendship is ultimately about reproduction. Love is ultimately about reproduction. And as I've said before, even if you choose not to reproduce, like let's say you get a cat instead of having a kid, and, you know, you still have sex, or maybe you have sex with your animate pillow, or maybe you just have sex with another person and you use birth control. Well, you're still acting it out. All you've done is turn yourself into a parody of a reproducing machine, right? All you've done is act out the behaviors of a reproducing machine without having the effect, without actually reproducing. But you haven't discovered some higher purpose. You haven't escaped from your natural purpose. You've just short-circuited your brain, essentially, right? You've plugged things into the wrong plugs, and so you're failing at your natural purpose, but that doesn't mean you have some other purpose. Just because you live alone with a cat and you spend your time drinking and masturbating, or taking pills, or watching anime, or whatever it is you do. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things in moderation, but you know what I'm saying here. You're doing things, and all those things are motivated by desires that evolved to make a reproducing machine reproduce. And there's no way around that. There's no escaping from that. There's no escaping from the condition of being a reproducing machine, from being a ganglion attached to a feeding tube and gonads. There's no other source of value in the universe. I think that's the horror of recognizing that there's no objective morality. It means that there's no other source of value other than reproduction. That's the only thing that can actually create value out of causality, because reproduction is a circle. And so the cause and the effect are in a circle. And that's what value is, when the effect becomes the cause. Right? If I want to do something and then I do it, then the idea of it precedes the reality of it. So in some sense, the effect is the cause of the effect. I don't know if I explained that well. You know, with regards to reproduction, the form of my hand is part of its own cause. because I inherited that form from my parents, and they inherited from theirs, and so on and so forth. And all of the people along that, along the many different chains from which I inherited my genes, they had functional hands. And if somebody had dysfunctional hands, they probably didn't reproduce, and so they're not part of my ancestry. So the form of the hand is part of the cause of the form of the hand. Or you could say the function of the hand is part of the cause of its form. And that's how reproduction generates value out of causality. And there's no way to have value if you're not a reproducing machine, if you're not part of that cycle. And you can say, well, I reject that cycle. But you're just rejecting it from the position of being a tube with a ganglion. You're not taking some higher perspective and saying, well, from this higher perspective, it's clearly bad. Because this guy is not adopting some higher perspective. He's judging it with respect to a delusion/lie that people use to camouflage their true intentions, or you could, it's sort of part of a competition. Like it's part of a competition, actually. It's a way we compete for resources and mates by, being holier than thou, being better than the other person. And it's also just kind of ignorance. Like, people don't know what they are. They didn't know that they were reproducing machines. They didn't know that they were ganglia, that the brain is just a bunch of neurons that are there to synchronize muscle twitches, right? And if you don't know that, well, you're going to maybe come up with some bullshit story. And it's going to be self-aggrandizing, and it's going to be useful as a way of, maybe explaining what you're doing, but also justifying what you're doing, justifying your intentions, justifying your feelings. So yeah, people are going to cook up some bullshit. But this guy is not adopting some, God's eye perspective when he judges life as being bad because it doesn't live up to this lie that these entropy tubes created. Right? That's the point. Now you might say, how can I go forward in this life knowing that I'm just an entropy tube with a ganglion attached to it and a pair of gonads? Well, what you do is you just embrace it. Say, yeah, I'm an entropy tube with a ganglion and some gonads, man, and doing my thing, and, got myself a nice little cutie fellow entropy tube with some nice milkers on her, and I mean, you just live. You just accept it. Instead of, can we live without lies? Well, I don't know. I guess so. I think I have. Maybe I'm lying to myself by saying that. I don't know, but I mean, I've known this stuff since I was a kid, so maybe for that reason I can let go of these. I never really had the illusions, I guess, or I didn't have them as strong as other people do, and I haven't believed in morality since I was about 9 years old. So I never thought there was some God's eye perspective from which things were good or bad. And I just accepted that. And yeah, I'm an entropy tube with gonads and a big ganglion. One of the biggest. Yeah, you got to be proud of your big gonads and your big ganglion. I mean, that's what you got to do. There was another line that I want to quote. It's from a book called Little Big Man. When old Lodgeskins is dying, he's about to die. He knows he's going to die. So he goes with his adopted grandson, who is this white guy who was captured as a child and grew up with the Cheyenne, and grew up in old Lodgeskin's tent, and was sort of his son or grandson. He calls him grandfather. Anyway, he goes up to the top of this mountain with old Lodgeskins, because old Lodgeskins is going to die. And old Lodgeskins says, I have killed many men, loved many women, and eaten much meat. And this is his summary of his existence. He's proud of being a successful animal. He's not pretending that there's some higher thing. I guess he is pretending that he's going to going to walk across the Milky Way or something, go to the happy hunting grounds or whatever. But his view of value is very Nietzschean. It's like you're in this world and you fight for these things and you either win or you lose. And he doesn't like, shit on his enemies. He's not really mean-spirited about having won, but he's like, yeah, I did all this stuff. I'm a great man. I fucked all these women. I killed all these animals and ate them. I killed all these men and left them, dead on the ground and tore off their hair. And I'm proud of it. I always think of that line. I have killed many men, loved many women, and eaten much meat. It's a great line. You can just be what you are. I guess that's all you can do. You can be what you are. You can pretend to be something you're not, but, that's just a lie. And you can lament what you are, but that doesn't change what you are. Or you can be what you are. Ephilists are in stage 2. Most people are in stage 1. They're deluded about what they are. The Ephilist has some idea of what he is and what life is, but he rejects it because he can't let go of the big lie of morality. He can't let go of this value standard, this fake value standard, this big lie. And the truly enlightened person lets go of that lie. He doesn't accept it descriptively and he doesn't accept it normatively. He just lets go of it. And is. That is the Zen. That is the Zen of being an entropy tube. The Zen of being an entropy tube with a ganglion and gonads. You simply accept what you are and be. Anyway, all right. Thanks for listening.